right, everybody. July 22nd, it starts. Alaska Startup Week. Woohoo! Anyway, Alaska Startup Week is coming, and before I get to our interview today, let's talk just a little bit about it. One, you can find all the events for Alaska Startup Week, Anchorage, Juneau, Fairbanks. You can find them online at alaska.startupweek.co. Number two, the contribution of the 49 SAF and the Small Business Development Center of Alaska to Alaska Startup Week is a July 27th conference, totally free in Anchorage at the Denina Center, called Rethink Startup. What's it all about? Well, the morning is about really showcasing some of Alaska's most successful entrepreneurs. We're going to sit down with Ron Duncan, the co-founder and president and CEO of GCI, one of Alaska's most successful entrepreneurs, first thing, 9 a.m., and Mayor Berkowitz is going to do a one-on-one interview with him. We've got a lot of other great speakers planned for the morning, and diverse entrepreneurs from Jonathan White at Steam Dot, Justin Green at Alaska Demolition, Siri Moss at the Alaska Rock Gym, all the way to Naya Korkuith, who built the African Market in East Anchorage, and Eva's Cupcakery, also in East Anchorage, and who received a microfinance loan. We're also going to hear from Mike Tamale, who is the founder and CEO of Neighborhood Development Centers, which is sort of a diverse and inclusive entrepreneurship support center based in Minnesota's Twin Cities. So that's the morning. The afternoon is all about connecting entrepreneurs to resources. We talk for an hour about different financing options, 2 different panels on financing, including risk capital funds that the 49 SAF has available. We hear about the schedule of events that's occurring in Alaska, and we hear from entrepreneurial educators as diverse as Startup Weekend, Launch Alaska, our universities, things like that. And they tell us why they should get the opportunity to educate you. And close the day out with some things at the University of Alaska's Business Enterprise Institute. Also hit the 49th State Brewing deck at about 5 o'clock for a nice little reception. So that's what's happening on July 27th. Do come. If you want to register, please register now. Seats are limited. They're filling up fast. 49saf.com. You can find the link there, or you can find us online at alaska.startupweek.co at the schedule of events. All right. The Jon Bittner, Joe Morrison interview. What is this all about? John and I go back a long way. Anchorage West High Eagles. We were in high school together, and a lot of the things we used to do, we still do. And I'm still disappointed in us in this interview in a way, because we just didn't have very many antics or misbehavior, and there's not really an amazing sort of after hours version of this podcast, so we're going to have to give this another shot. Anyway, it's a good interview. Of course, John's amazing on the air. And, you know, it's nice to hear from somebody who is he's enthusiastic about Alaska's economy. And he has optimism. And that's really amazing to hear right now. And it's somebody who we really need in our ecosystem who's making a difference. John took quite the stand on what kind of businesses need to be developed in Alaska. You know, he said, quote, "It's not just the high growth startup stuff," end quote. And he's right. A variety of different businesses employ people. And we do need to make great progress in creating companies in Alaska that earn $20 million or more in annual recurring revenue. That's kind of my game and the 49 SAF's game. But look, you know, if more businesses were capable of employing just one more person across the country, you'd see employment levels increase. And so it's really important that we support the variety of entrepreneurs, from the micro enterprise entrepreneurs all the way to the people who are aiming high. They all need to be supported. All right, Jon Bittner, man, is he good. Let's go to the interview. Happy Alaska Startup Week, everybody. See you soon. See you on July 27th. Here's Jon. Some jokes and we'll close it out. So, I feel like I'm a little bit. I feel like I'm pushing our friendship further than I've pushed it before. So, anyway, what did you do today?
What did I do today? I actually had a really fun day. I got to meet with a bunch of different people about some projects we're working on. We're talking microloans. We're talking microgrids. We're pretty much micro across the board. We're micro.
Micro everything.
Micro, macro.
Yeah, well, there's only 750,000 people in Alaska. We're macro and micro, right?
There you go.
This is Jon Bittner. Well, I'm not Jon Bittner.
It could be.
I can't be Jon Bittner. Go ahead, Jon. Please tell the lovely folks at home who you are and what you do.
You've got too much hair to be Jon Bittner. My name is Jon Bittner. I am the executive director of the Small Business Development Center and president of the Joe Morrison Fan Club.
Yeah, so I'm going to put that thing that we did earlier in the podcast somewhere. I did not have a witty response to that. Hey, everybody, Joe Morrison, 49 SAF Pod, sitting down with Jon Bittner, who I think 4 months ago, became executive director at the SBDC of Alaska. Is that right?
That's right. That's right.
Congratulations again.
Thank you.
So I think where we should start off is we're going to do a little economic development talk today. We're going to talk a little bit about the joint conference that our institutions/functions are working on. Talk a little bit about Alaska Startup Week, all that stuff. But the first question, the question I ask everybody, Jon Bittner, what's your favorite for-profit business and why?
Oh man, that's like asking my favorite kid. I love them all. That's what I love about my job. But if I had to pick one, I'd have to pick a food one, right? Not for any other reason than because I'm kind of a fat kid at heart. I love Wild Scoops. I love 49th Brewing Company. I love Moose's Tooth. All that stuff. I think they're fun. I think they're sort of quintessentially Alaskan, and I enjoy going to them a lot.
What if you had to pick something national or international? What would it be?
Oh, like not Alaskan?
No. I mean, I think Alaskan businesses are great, and I love all those businesses you talked about. Although I haven't had Wild Scoops ice cream.
What?
I haven't.
That's outrageous.
Give me a flavor.
All of them. Are you kidding me? You haven't had Wild Scoops ice cream?
No.
That's it. We're done here.
Okay.
It's delicious. You should totally go. They got a new downtown location. The line's crazy, but it's worth it. Let's see. So a national business, huh? Well, that's an excellent question.
Something scaled. Something scaled, something blue.
I'm a big fan of, I think it's a kind of a fun little niche market is I do one of those weekly shaving things, the shaving club, right?
This is what Penny Gage said. She loves she likes the shaving thing as well.
It's a cool deal.
Dollar Shave Club? Is that what you're into?
Now, my wife just did a different one, right? So now we've got this competing shave thing going on, and I just think it's a fun little model, right? I mean, it saved me some money, but B, their marketing was viral. It was pretty, it's a pretty weird little niche, but I like it, and I think they're doing pretty well. Although, having said that, because Penny already said the Dollar Shave thing, and I can't.
I love how you're going to talk about like 9 businesses.
I am. Okay. This is. I don't know why you invited me on here. You knew what you were getting into.
7 or 8 minutes before we start talking about other things. No,
is that all?
No. Give me what's your other
Drone Racing League. I'm going with that. They just raised $20 million in capital, including some from the guy that owns the Mavericks. They're on ESPN, second year.
Mark Cuban, the guy that owns the Mavericks.
Have you heard of him?
I've heard of him.
He's kind of a big deal.
A
little bit. Yeah. Good friend of mine, but not really. But no, I think that's a cool one, right? I mean, I think that it's this weird confluence of sort of NASCAR meets AV Club meets all sorts of fun stuff. They got a race in Dubai, not the American Drone Racing League, but there's a race in Dubai. There's $1 million in prizes. Some kid, 14-year-old kid from Britain won like $250,000. They've got a virtual reality thing. You use an Oculus Rift, and that's how they practice. And if you do well enough there, you get invited to play against the pros, and that's how you get in.
So that's your night job, huh?
Yeah, man. Okay. I'm gonna start one up here. Arctic Drone Racing League, man. Remember this. This is where it happened. I announced it here. We're gonna do it in Sullivan Arena. They could use the business, I think.
All right, so let's get serious a little bit. Why? You took over the SBDC, and you've been in the job 3 or 4 months. What have you seen, and what are some of the changes that you're planning?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So SBDC's got about a 30-year history here in Alaska, and we deal with about 1,000 small businesses a year. What's interesting about that is this is a small business as defined by SBA. So it's under 500 employees, under $20 million in revenue. So here in Alaska, that's about
big business.
That's about 90% of our businesses, right? So we're really just the business center. But what we're seeing lately is we're seeing more people trying to find capital or having difficult time with more traditional methods, more traditional like bank loans and things like that. Not necessarily because there isn't money at the banks to be lent, but because of the uncertainty, we believe, and the uncertainty on the state level they are a little more risk averse than normal. So we're seeing this transition from seeking out bank loans to seeking out non-traditional funding, crowdfunding, friends, family, and fools, but also an uptick in angel investing. So, building on what you've done with the 49th SAF and the fund of funds you've been doing. So
yeah, I mean, certainly, drop in the bucket, small progress on the angel and equity front, but it's been notable progress. Right? And I think one of the things we'll do today is talk about the last 5 years, because we've been doing this for 5 years.
Feels like
man.
I had hair when we started.
But you know what? I've talked to 2 banks recently, and they said 2 things. One, the good news, they're not seeing any increase in delinquency or slow pay from their business community. And the bad news is there's really not a lot happening in originations. They're not placing a lot of new capital.
That's true. And what's interesting is not because they don't have the money. I mean, if you look at First National, they just released their annual report, and I think it was like 14 or 16% profit margin for the year. So the banks are doing good. It's just finding the right risk profile is difficult, and it's hard. I mean, if you don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, you saw what happened with the legislature. What was it, today or yesterday, when they're dealing with the oil taxes? I mean, one side wanted to get rid of all the oil tax credits altogether. The other side said that's economic suicide. We can't do that.
Stay out of that, man. I work for the mayor. I don't get the luxury of talking about that stuff. Nor frankly do I understand it. Let's be honest. I don't get it.
Let's just say confusion on the state level as to the economic future of the state is causing, I think, some ripple effects. Another interesting thing that we're seeing actually is we're seeing not a large number, but we're seeing an upswing in sort of consulting businesses. And what's happening is technically skilled people are getting laid off, and they're being encouraged by their former employers to form their own businesses and basically reapply for their jobs. And that way they sort of lower the costs of, having this technical expertise. So when you see sort of the unemployment rates go up, we're seeing a bit of an upswing in this sort of counter movement where they're actually being hired back, but on a consulting basis.
So you've got a 30-year-old statewide organization called the Small Business Development Center. I'll keep pressing you. Yeah. What are 2 changes you want to make?
2 changes I want to make. Let's see. So one of the things that we're trying to do is I really want us to tell the story of small business in Alaska better, right? So we've got a 30-year database. Like I said, we deal with about 1,000 businesses a year, give or take. That's a lot of, granular level data. I want to get that out there. I want to sort of tell people, look, where are new jobs coming from? Here in Alaska, largely they're coming from new business starts, right? That's where the job growth is. That's where the opportunities are. If we want to diversify our economy, if we want to do import substitution, if we want to become a more mature, developed economy as opposed to sort of this one-trick pony that's sort of at the whim of a commodity, we have to start focusing on developing the businesses we have and developing new industry verticals. And, not just the high-growth startup stuff. I mean, this is everything across the board, food businesses, service businesses, telecom, things like that. I mean, if we don't start now, we should have started 10 years ago, frankly, really hitting the ground running on this, but it's hard to make that case when things are good.
I think it would have been prescient if the Alaska as a group, I mean, I was going to say the word legislature, but that's not really fair. I think that if Alaska had, devoted 5 basis points, 5's too many, 2 basis points, 1 basis point on an annual basis for 20 years on kind of investing in and diversifying its economy, we might have a different Alaska, but that's just not how we think, right?
Well, and it's tough, right? I mean, so there's been attempts, right? But it's always
never sustained, though. Not sustained a bit, couple years, and then it dies.
Right, or I mean, even Division of Economic Development, right? They've got a loan program specific to comfish that's actually been fairly successful. The difficulty is, we think we know what the answer is, and the answer is we don't know, right? I mean, we try very specific things, like we try to do a fish processing plant in Anchorage, but we didn't do the research, right? What we need to do is just support, kind of like this entrepreneurial stuff and the things that the 49th SAF, you didn't go out and you say, we're going to only fund X type of businesses. You're like, we're going to fund people that know what to look for in the startup community, and they're going to fund the businesses, and we're just going to support their efforts. I mean, I think more of that probably would have been better, but it's 2020 hindsight, right? I mean, it's easy for me to say that now, today. And I think that going forward, we just need to look for opportunities to support what's already working and to identify things that we look at as maybe even economic detriments as opportunities.
Well, I'll build on that a little bit. I think one of the things that Alaska is getting better at and historically has been bad at has been shooting out of a cannon massive amounts of capital for no purpose. So, there's a $100 million X or a $500 million X, and it's a corporation or it's a thing that's going to do this other thing. Well, what really are the outcomes of that effort? And I think that the citizenry rightly sort of says, well, we spent $100 million on this thing. What did we get for it? No, not much. We never built what we were going to build. It benefited a couple people. I'm really interested in, I think, one thing, and the 49 SAF has gone better and worse than expected, which is a deeper conversation for another time. But one thing I'm really interested in is what can you do with small amounts of capital? Like small amounts of capital can go a really long way. The Alaska Seed Fund, run by, I think, your organization, is a great example of that. A couple $1,000 and it builds prototypes.
Well, and we're actually looking to build on that. We're looking into the opportunity of partnering with some organizations to create a microloan program, right? Not a for-profit microloan program, but something that is targeted towards businesses that are either unbanked or underbanked, and to get them up and running and to get them into a place where they can then go forth and get a bank loan eventually. It's sort of a combination of not just giving them the capital, but giving them the support they need to really succeed. And that's kind of SBDC's wheelhouse, right? That's what we've been doing for so long, and we're really good at it. We never had our own sort of capital program that we could use as sort of a feeder, or I don't want to say like training program to get into more traditional, financing mechanisms, but kind of, right? It sort of allows you to get this funding without putting your house at risk or your car at risk or your kid's future at risk, right? We're just trying to help people start up businesses as fast and as, effectively as possible.
Do SBDCs in different parts of the country do microfinance?
Some of them do. Albany, New York, actually, does a really cool program, and it's based on, similar to what we're talking about, character-based lending. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's Albany with an all. It's not. There's no al in Albany. It's not Albany.
How dare you?
Albany. Albany by the Hudson River.
I've heard it both ways.
All right, seriously. No, but tell me about it.
So anyway, they do a partnership with their local university and lending institutions and some other partners, and they provide character-based lending, right? It's not based on the traditional 4 C's of credit score, collateral, things like that. It's based on, the person's individual ability, and it's targeting unbanked and underbanked folks. And it's small scale stuff, right? $25,000 and less is what we're proposing. 0% APR. This is really just trying to deploy capital, but not as a grant, right? Which you put that out there and then it's gone. Whereas this is something where ideally you would get the money back. And traditionally speaking, if you look at loan programs, both in the US and outside, these types of programs, even though they don't have any sort of negative consequences if you default, tend to have a north of 90% repayment rate.
So, Jon, we're headed into Alaska Startup Week, formerly known as Alaska Entrepreneurship Week, which formerly kind of was started 5 years ago. You had no small part in it. You helped kind of create it. So tell me about some of the changes you've seen working in the entrepreneurship space in Alaska.
Sure. Well, what's interesting is this actually really was driven home to me recently. Your shop did this. Brendan Babb, the Chief Innovation Officer of the Anchorage Muni, and others put together an event over at the Bearstooth Theater. And we had Tim O'Reilly and Jennifer Polka. Tim O'Reilly, for those of you who don't know, is the head of O'Reilly Media, which is the company that publishes Make Magazine. Jennifer Polka is the head of Code for America, a civic hacking group. And they were up here to talk about how to integrate technology and data into civic government. And I got the honor of introducing the mayor at that event. And one of the things that I really fixated on was, 5 years ago when we started doing this, we created the first hackathon in Alaska, and we created the first Maker Fair in Alaska, and we created all these different programs that didn't exist. And we went from that with people telling us, this isn't going to work. You can't do this. This is Alaska. We don't do this kind of thing. To now we've got 2 of the biggest names in Silicon Valley coming up here to sort of support what we do, and they actually said that they were up here to learn from us, which I thought was just amazing. Right, so that's the difference. We went from, this can't be done sort of view to now. We go toe to toe with just about any city of our size and even slightly larger, I'd say, in terms of what we're capable of.
Do you think in the entrepreneurship space there's a shortage of startups?
I think that when we first started, oil was at $110 a barrel, right? Employment was high, at least in the urban centers, right? I mean, rural Alaska's.
You sound so smart with all your numbers.
Just making it up. I can't pronounce Albany. But I mean, it was selling entrepreneurship was a difficult proposition. We didn't have angel funds, right? There was no capital that was suitable for high growth startup, facilitating high growth startups. So we timed that. You timed that almost perfectly, really. I mean, you spun that up just in time. You and the mayor and others.
Alan Johnston. One mayor, Alan Johnston, and Lucinda Mahoney spun it up at the right time and hired me. To be fair,
but they're not sitting here. They didn't invite me on their podcast. If they do invite me to their podcast, I'll sing their praises too. But the timing was perfect because it took us a while to spin that up. That had never been done before, really, not in a formalized way. I mean, there was a huge learning curve there. There was a huge learning curve among entrepreneurs on what is and isn't marketable. What does and doesn't work here? You can't just, read MIT Technology Review and say, all right, biotech or, biotechnology 3D printing is hot right now. Let's get into that. I mean, does that work up here? Who knows? But now we're focusing on the things that we have strengths in: microgrid technology, healthcare, especially as it relates to providing distance healthcare. We've got food service stuff. That's you look at the Alaska Brewing Company. That's not a traditional startup model, but they're the 25th largest brewery in the nation, 15th largest craft brewery in the nation. Right? Moose's Tooth is one of the top pizzerias in the nation. This isn't Silicon Valley stuff, but it's important. It has a purpose. So I think that we're seeing more of it. I hope that we'll see an exponential growth in the number of startups going forward as well.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the upcoming conference that we have planned. And are you in town or are you out?
I'm bouncing around. We've got our SBDC's national organization does a 5-year accreditation. And unfortunately, they've chosen Startup Week to come and re-accredit us, hopefully. Fingers crossed. So I will actually be in Kenai the day that we're doing the 27th. We're doing the panel now. It starts on the 26th, though, right? With the
So the 49th State Angel Fund has some internal business to kind of sort out on the 26th, and a day of technical training and equity finance. Oh yeah, that's where it gets fun. Woo. It gets fun when you intersect it with government. But let's talk about the 27th. So, sure. How are we going to start off the day?
We are going to start off the day with the mayor, right? He's going to launch us, and this is he's got his pattern down on this, man. That guy is all about innovation. He's all about growing the economy and optimism, which I love. I mean, here's the problem I see right now. So many people are so negative. They look at the paper and they think that things are going wrong and everything's the place is on fire. You look at the numbers. It's not. You don't need to be that pessimistic. So events like this, and when the mayor gets out there and says, everybody calm the heck down, let's do this, I think it's a good thing. So
the mayor is going to Charlie Rose it, and he's going to sit down with one of the greatest entrepreneurs in Alaska history, really, Ron Duncan, right? We've got 3, maybe 4 or 5 publicly traded companies in Alaska, depending on how you count them. GCI. Then we're going to talk about some success stories where we'll at least have Justin Green from Alaska Demolition, who's a wild man, really fun, and Siri Moss from the Alaska Rock Gym, who has been working in the rock gym business and a founding owner of the rock gym for 22 years, I think.
You're kidding.
She's at least been in indoor climbing for 22 years, and she's been passionately devoted to developing an indoor climbing culture in Anchorage. We're going to talk a little bit about franchising.
Yeah, we are.
And I think that's exciting. Like, why do you think that's a good fit for the Entrepreneurship Summit?
Holy moly. I mean, franchises kill it up here. Are you kidding me? I mean, you look at some of the top numbers posted in nationwide in franchises. I guarantee you Alaska's on that list, right? If they've got a franchise location up here, they are killing it. Everything from fast food, Dairy Queen, Krispy Kreme, BurgerFi. I think we're actually having the guy from BurgerFi who owns the franchises up here talking, right?
Right, Jack Lewis, and I think Jack Lewis is also Krispy Kreme.
Yeah.
And he got his start as an individual entrepreneur, do it the hard way, built Alaska Sourdough, mining company, and I think Fire Tap Ale House, I believe.
I missed the mining company.
I could be wrong. We are going to talk about some of the markets that we see growing in Alaska. Certainly that's beer, 30 plus breweries in the state, I think.
Yeah.
Marijuana, hey, it is what it is. It's going to make the state and entrepreneurs a lot of money and more. And so look for that. And then we're going to spend an hour talking about inclusive entrepreneurship before we go to lunch. So do you have any take on this stuff? Diverse faces of Alaska entrepreneurs?
I think that I think that Alaska is one of our biggest strengths is our diversity. I mean, we have some of the most diverse census tracts in the nation. We are an international logistics hub. We're the third busiest cargo hub in the nation, fifth in the world. I mean, it bounces 1 or 2 points every time. But I mean, there are reasons for us to really try to leverage that diversity that I think we haven't fully taken advantage of. So I love that, and I love the upcoming and growth markets. I mean, we're doing tourism too, right? 26 glacier cruises.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
That's 2 million people are coming this year, and it's been growing every year. I mean, that's crazy. A renewable resource, right?
Well, and I think one of the interesting things about Southeast is they are kind of entrepreneurial by nature because their natural resource is 2 million people getting off a boat.
Right?
So,
you got to be a hustler.
Yeah, 2 million people get off a boat. More on inclusive entrepreneurship. We're going to bring up Mike Tamale, who is the CEO and founder of Neighborhood Development Center, which is kind of like the Small Business Development Center, but it's culturally focused to, deal with 23 different countries, 12 languages, that kind of thing. So we're going to hear from him. We'll also talk to some of the diverse entrepreneurs in Alaska, Eva's Cupcakery,
nice.
and the African market.
Hey, did they get an ACLT microloan, the Eva's Cupcakery folks?
They did, and segue. So the morning's kind of about expanding the ideas of entrepreneurship that we've had here in the state. We've been kind of focused lately, I'd say, certainly since we've been in this game, on the startup conversation the last 5 years. Mm-hmm. We're sort of returning to small business plus startup conversation. But in the afternoon, 1 o'clock, we start getting into, or 1:30, we start getting into financing. So the first half hour, 1:30, get financed. How do you get financed? We talk to Alaska Community Land, or Anchorage Community Land Trust about microloans. We talk to the state about their crowdfunding law and how that works. We talk to Alaska Growth Capital and Wells about pre-bankable and bankable debt. Then, of course, we talk about equity and risk capital at 2. We're going to hear from Juliet Shepard up in Fairbanks. She's coming down to give us the lay of the land on what happens when for Alaska startups.
Fedco in the house?
Fedco in the house, and it's always been a question, sort of, when is the Alaska Innovation Competition in Fairbanks? When is the Path to Prosperity Competition in Juneau? When are we holding a startup weekend in Anchorage? When are we holding a startup? So we kind of hope to calendar this out a little better and give people that information.
Man, I love the Arctic Innovation Competition. That's my favorite. It really is. Every year I've gone for 5 years. It's brilliant.
Then after the calendar, we're going to go into reverse pitches, and this is the idea that basically the entrepreneurs in the room, we're hosting this conference for would-be entrepreneurs, aspirational entrepreneurs, and actual entrepreneurs. Well, we're going to hear from people like Startup Weekend, Launch Alaska, and the universities on why they should get to teach you, why they should have the privilege to teach you. So they pitch you for 5 minutes on their program and why it's so great. And then, John, we turn things over to you, the Small Business Development Center and the Business Enterprise Institute for the rest of the day. You want to take us through it?
Yeah. This is gonna be fun. We've got so SBDC is part of the university's Business Enterprise Institute, run by the one and only Christy Bell. And we are a series of, I think there's 7 organizations under there, right? There's us, there's the Center for Economic Development, there's the Minority Business Center, a bunch of other groups. And we're going to have a selection of them, including, although they're not under BEI, the UAF Office of Intellectual Property. Have you met Gwen? Do you know her?
I don't really know her, no.
Oh, she's amazing. She just got onboarded as the OIP, the head of the OIP there. She's also involved in their Center for the Alaska Center for Energy and Power, which is a really cool group that deals with microgrids and other things. They're doing a lot of fun stuff out there. We've got one of our SBDC business advisors, Lance Ahern, the one and only. And, of course, Adam Krenicki, who's based out of Fairbanks and is one of the intellectual property, patents, and all-around brilliant folks that work at SBDC. So it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about seed funds. We're going to talk about startups and scale-ups, available technology, all sorts of really cool things. This is a great event. How many of these have you done? This is basically like the Angel Forum, on steroids, right?
So we didn't want to do an investor thing. And part of that is because we've created 4 funds over the last 5 years. Yeah. And we feel that sort of the investor education needs to exist without us.
Yeah.
And we started off kind of creating this economic development oriented conference, and our committee was like, we don't want you to do that. We want you to put entrepreneurs in the room and to increase excitement around the space. So we'll see how we do. I'm excited. I think the morning's about, expanding the definitions of entrepreneurship and really thinking about what we've done in Alaska well, and connecting and showcasing that excitement. And the afternoon is kind of a little more traditional. How do you get funded? What's happening in Alaska? What are the educational opportunities for you? How can the system sort of help you grow your business?
Is there an after party? Where's the after party?
Well, we don't know. I mean, that's still getting locked down, but there's probably an after party, so stay tuned. More information to come. Guys, that's it. Joe Morrison, 49SAF Podge, signing off.
Jon Bittner, SBDC. Thanks for having me, man.
Where Jon Bittner cannot stop listening to the great sounds of, who should we go with? I'm going to go with Haley Steinfeld. Jon Bittner is a huge Haley Steinfeld fan, and of course, that's when he is not listening to Avril Lavigne. Joe Morrison, 49SAF Pod from Amber Bay Loop, signing off. We out.
Later. Inappropriate content, is that what we're doing here?
So just talk. Wait, hang on.
I wasn't done. I'm also the president of the Joe Morrison fan club.
I'm the president of the Jon Bittner
Hate Society.